Hi,
Hi.
it's Nancy from Sipping and Painting Hampden, and we're going to paint this lovely painting today called Balloons at Sunset. Yay. All right. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up my biggest brush, my biggest flat brush, and I'm going to cover my whole canvas with just plain old water. And the reason I do that is that it's easier for me to paint on a canvas that's a little bit wet. Denver is a very dry place, and paints dry out really quickly here. So if I put a little bit of water on my canvas, then my paints will just kind of move more smoothly and not dry out so quickly.
Okay.
And I have to be very careful to make sure that I'm not dipping my brush in my tea or beverage, only in my water. So we'll see if I can pull that off. I'm enjoying a glass of tea today. I don't know what you're drinking. It's always nice to paint and sip.
Yeah.
I might switch to a glass of wine. We'll see.
Sounds better than tea. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, but I do this every night, remember?
I understand.
Today we're going to be using just plain old primary colors. So yellow, red, blue, and then black and white. And then we'll use those primary colors to make other colors. And I'll show you how to do that. I also have a stack of napkins, and I have brushes. I'm going to use 3 sizes of brushes today. And so I'm going to be using a large flat, a medium flat, and a small round. But since you have a variety of brushes, it doesn't really matter. Just use whatever feels good. And I'll tell you what I'm using as I'm using it, okay?
Okay.
Cool. All right, so we've got our water on there. Oh, and by the way, I also have an apron on and the jar of water. That's everything you need. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to paint a light blue version of, of the background. So I'm going to pick up my biggest fan flat brush. I'm going to put blue paint on it on both sides. And then I'm just going to streak across with some blue paint. And if it's a little streaky, that's great, because it's going to end up real streaky anyway. So don't worry, you don't have to make it perfect. It's going to end up streaky anyway. If your paints are really solid like peanut butter, you're going to need to add water. I like to use them about the consistency of like a Greek yogurt. That seems to give me, it's soft enough I can spread it around, but it's not drippy. So yeah, just remember you can add a little water if yours gets thick or dried out, okay? And by a little, I mean a few drops. And I'm pulling my paint all the way across horizontally. Now you might notice my blue is slightly different than the blue in this painting. And that's because at our studio, we have about 10 different shades of blue. We have about 500 different paintings that we teach here, or that we have in the past taught. And so this may have been an ultramarine blue on the original, and I'm using a phthalo blue. But we're going to make so many changes to this, so many other colorful streaks, it just won't matter. It's going to be beautiful regardless of the blue you put down first. And phthalo blue is a really nice basic blue. So whatever blue people have at home, as long as it looks blue to them, it'll make a beautiful copy of this painting. And speaking of copies, when you paint using a sample or an inspirational painting, it never turns out exactly the same. Mine won't turn out exactly like the original. Yours won't turn out exactly like mine. And that's what we want. We want your personality to show through it. no one is ever going to see the original painting. They're just going to see yours and they're going to think you're a genius. So I'm just pulling this back and forth horizontally and leaving some of those streaks because I like those streaks. It adds a little texture to the background. I'm also going to paint the sides of the canvas like this, the sides, and then I'm going to paint the top and the bottom as well. And the reason I'm doing that is that if you paint around the tops and the sides and the bottoms, that's called a gallery wrap. And when you have a gallery wrap, you don't have to put this painting in a frame. You can just hang it right on the wall and it will look finished. So that'll save you some money. And if down the road you do want to put it in a frame, you still can. You have that option. It's a little more modern looking to not have a frame. And it'll save you some money, but if I win the lottery, I'm gonna frame all mine. Because why not?
Why not?
Frames are expensive. Or can be. Now, since I painted the top and the sides of this one, I can't very well pick it up without getting lots of paint on my hands. So I'll just wait till it's a little more dry and then I'll paint the bottom. But there's no hurry. I can do that at any time. I'm going to go ahead and tell you the next step, even though I don't expect you to be anywhere near where I am, okay?
Okay.
But I want to tell you, just so you really don't worry about those streaks, after we put on our blue, we're going to deliberately pick up white and streak on some white to make sure that we do have some streaks in our painting, okay? So while you're putting on your blue, just keep that in mind, that if you leave some areas streaky, then you won't have to do so much of what I'm doing right now. Okay?
Okay. You guys are so much faster than me.
And if you get a drip, just quickly brush it out and then let it dry and you can always paint over it later.
Okay.
See, when you're putting on your white, the same thing with your white. If it's a little, thick like peanut butter, you want it to be kind of like the consistency of sour cream, right? Or yogurt. So don't eat it though. But just add a little water if it starts to get dried out. Okay. I didn't clean this brush properly once, and now it's got just a few dried
Oh no.
bristles. But it reminds me, always clean your brushes. Don't get that noisy brush.
Sounds like a zipper.
Yeah, isn't it weird? And it's just a couple of hairs on it that are got hard, and the rest of them are pretty good, so I haven't thrown it out, but yeah. Learn my lesson. I keep forgetting I need a comb. The solution for that is to take a comb and just
Oh.
comb it. While you're finishing up your blue and white background, I'm making the corners and the sides from the far left and far right a little darker blue than the center. Just
Okay.
adding a little more blue to those areas. And the reason for that is the sunset's going to be in the middle, and it's just going to bring my eye more into the middle. But I'm not making it, you know, like a wall or a band of blue, just a few extra blue streaks coming out from the side. So one word of warning, be careful that you don't over blend. It doesn't have to be perfect, and it shouldn't be all blended to one color. So if you're a person who is very meticulous, if you schedule people for a living, or you're in accounting or engineering, folks who are very meticulous tend to overblend. You want to keep this streaky and imperfect, okay? Nature is never perfect, and if you make it too perfect looking, it won't look good, okay? So what I want to do is I'm looking at the bottom of this painting. I want you to notice that the horizon line is lower than halfway. So here's about the halfway point on my canvas, and the horizon line is below the halfway point. And the reason for that is if you divide your painting, if you put your horizon exactly at the center, your eye doesn't know if it wants to look at the top first or the bottom first. So if you make your horizon lines not halfway, either just above or just below the center of your painting, then it just looks better, because your eyes will know, you know, to just look at one side and then the other. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and sketch on my horizon line. It doesn't really matter what color you use. We're only going to make a line. I happen to be, I don't know, I put it in yellow. It doesn't really matter. But I want to just, I'm going to measure it with my hand. Now my canvas is bigger than yours. If you have I have a 16 by 20. You have a 12 by 16 if you have our kits. But whatever size canvas you're going to use, just think about that it's about 60% down the canvas, okay? So 50% is half and half, and then 60% down is a little lower than that. So that's the general idea. We're just going to put a line, and it doesn't have to be perfect across the center. And don't worry, it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be straight. We're going to be fixing that later. We just want to have a general idea where the top of the water is going to be, okay? Now, yellow paint and red paint are notorious. It depends on the brand, and it depends on the exact color. I'm using chrome yellow and magenta, but some yellow paints and some red paints are more transparent, meaning they're thinner. They don't have as much pigment in them, so they don't show up very well. To make that show up as bright as it just did, what I did is I mixed in a little white into some of my yellow. And then when you do that, that helps the yellow show up more, because white has a lot of pigment in it. We use titanium white in our kits. It has a lot of pigment. And so adding a little bit of white to your yellow and stirring that in will help that yellow show up more. And if it turns green, that's okay too. If your painting is still a little wet, as long as we're working in the water, if it turns green, it's fine. If it's soaking wet, if your painting is soaking wet, you might want to hold off and wait a few minutes and just watch, okay? Here's how I know if it's really wet. You can see right here, this is very wet, that part right here, because it's shiny when I move it around in the light. But then here, it's matte, it's not shiny. So I know that's dry. So if you put on your paint very thickly, it's going to take a little longer to dry, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. You can either, if yours is really wet, you can either wait for it to dry because time will dry it, or you can put a blow dryer on it, or you can put it in front of a fan. That's 3 ways. My favorite way is just to pick it up and wave it around. In Denver, because things are so dry, or any place in the West, that's an easy way to dry things because the air is already really dry. I'm going to go ahead and show you this. Mine is dry. So even if you're waiting a little bit for yours to be wet, it's okay. I'll just go ahead and show you. I'm going to go one color at a time. I already put on some white streaks. I can put on more later when I want to, but right now I'm only going to use yellow. And I'm going to put yellow. Well, let's talk about this composition first. This painting has a bunch of bright streaks here. It has a bunch of bright streaks there. I'm not quite sure why, to be honest with you, but it does look like there's some little blue storm clouds in the middle of the sunset. So I'm going to guess that that's why this is broken up with some blue. You can break it up with a little bit of storm clouds, blue clouds in between, or you can just make it across yellow. With the bright colors. Either way works. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to I'm going to streak really lightly. I'm barely touching the canvas, barely touching it and in fact, I'm going to add a little bit of water to my paint to make it a little thinner. So it's like ink or pancake syrup. I want to keep those lines really thin. So I'm just going to have them really thin. The yellow ones are going to be up a little closer to the horizon because that's more of a sunsetty color. And I want to refrain from overdoing it. I tend to overdo things. So I'm going to try real hard not to. And then I'm going to do the same thing up on the top, up here, the exact same thing. Real thin, pull them across thinly. But they don't have to be exactly in the same place. In the top part, I can make those a little thicker. And I'll tell you why, because the bottom line, the bottom in the water, that's broken up by the ripples of water. So you could put it on a little more thickly in the top. I'm going to put a little more white over that midline so you can see where that horizon line is. Okay, so there's my horizon line. I have a little yellow below. I have a little yellow above. And, roughly similar. They're not exactly the same. Nothing about this painting is going to be perfect. After you get your yellow streaks on, I am going to go back in and put a little bit more white just above the horizon. And just below the horizon. And the reason for that is that's where in the center here, that's where the sun's light would be the brightest. So I want to make sure the center is the brightest. And white in this painting is brighter than yellow. And so it's going to concentrate the sun in the center. Like I said, if you want to break it up into 2 parts with some storm clouds in the middle, you can. I'm not quite sure why I'd want to do that. But so long as we remember that we're going to go we have white, then we're gonna go yellow, then we're gonna go orange, then we're gonna go red, then we're gonna go purple. I'm gonna take you one step at a time through the colors. Now, again, it's brighter here in 2 spots because they divided up with some storm clouds. If you want that, then instead of doing it in the center like I am, then do it in 2. Break it up with blue in between. Either way works. Or we can just come in and break up the center with some blue after too, that works. So then the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna mix a little orange. I'm taking a clean, small, round brush. And when I say round, it's because the metal part is not crimped anywhere, and it just, when you put it in your hands and spin the brush, it just feels round.
Not like the tip was round.
Yeah, well, the tip is round if you look at it straight on.
Okay.
So I'm just gonna mix together a little red and a little yellow to make orange. And I'm not mixing together all my red and all my yellow, just some of it. Because might need, need some of it, the pure color later, who knows? It's kind of funny, I went in and I put shadows under these mountains, but now I think it looks muddy. So I think I'll just cover those up. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I agree. I like the balloon
Yeah,
shadows.
the balloon ones are awesome.
Yeah, so I'm gonna cover those up, so don't worry about those, okay?
Okay.
All right, so here's the more white and here's the more yellow, right? So in and around the yellow ones, I'm gonna streak on real lightly, barely touching the canvas again, some orange. So it's still part of that, it's still part of the sunset, but these are more in the yellow area and even going a little bit higher and a little bit outside of it. And the reason for that is that, again, the sun is most intense here, so it's going to be brightest. And then as it goes out, it's going to get, the colors get more dark. So sunsets tend to be white, yellow, orange, red, purple, blue, black. It's a very predictable range of colors in a sunset.
Arizona gets a lot of pink in there too because of all the dust.
Yeah, we get a lot of pink here too. Isn't it beautiful? I love it. Well, pink, when I say red, I mean pink too.
Okay.
Yeah, we get a lot of pink clouds here too. It's awesome. When you are ready, we're going to add a little bit of white to some of our red to make a pinky red. Right now it's like cherry red, and it's going to be darker than Pepto-Bismol, more red than that, but in the pink direction. So it's just adding a little bit of white to some red, just to make it stand out a little bit more, okay? So it's a cross between pink and red. I'm not quite sure what color to call that. Like a petunia, I guess.
Okay.
And then we're going to slightly above the orange and slightly to the sides of it and overlapping with the orange. This is more of an little bit on the outsides color, not right in the white. And we're just going to put in our streaks with pink. This painting is not going to look like a sunset until we put our mountains in, and then it's going to be like, ah.
See it. Oh, I think that was exactly Pepto-Bismol colored.
And again, I'm barely touching the canvas. I'm just doing it lightly. And after you get some of those on, if you want to add some that have a little more white in them for pink, go for it. Okay. For a true pink, go for it. Because they would be brighter than these, I would put them a little closer to the center if you're doing a true pink.
Okay.
Like a lighter pink, I mean, like cotton candy. Because the brighter the color, the closer it should be to the sun, right? If you overdo it, and I have a tendency to overdo everything, that's kind of who I am. You can always go back in later and then put, let this dry and then mix a light blue and break it up with light blue. So
Okay.
don't worry if you overdo it, like I usually overdo mine. Later on, so after it's all dry, I just paint some sky back over it. So for example, I can come in with a little bit of light blue and just kind of break it up a little bit. And no one will know later that I put on so many colors it looks like Walt Disney threw up. I always clean my brushes really well in between colors. So that way you don't get any surprises. And then I just dab them off on the napkin to make sure they're clean. Sometimes surprises can be happy accidents. And sometimes they're just surprises.
Less happy surprises.
I'm just using the teeny tiny brush to break up some of my colors with blue again, just because of what I do. I love color and I put it on like crazy. And sometimes I have to go, all right, clean that up a bit, Nance.
This is, I made like a dark pink and a light pink. She said do this from like all the way on the outside and the bedroom like that. Like the break.
If you're getting mud, and what I mean by mud is if your colors are turning brown, what that means is that your blue probably wasn't dry enough. And so if that happens, we can fix it. No problem, no problem. We just let the whole thing dry, and then we go over it with colors that are brighter. And we can, basically we just kind of start over. Streak in, we let it all dry and then streak in blue. And then we, do the same thing that we did before. We just basically start over, but it wouldn't take as long. But if you're getting any brown, don't worry, don't panic. Everything is fixable. That's the thing I love about painting. That does not happen in real life. Everything is not fixable in real life, but in painting, it's your painting, your world. You can change your world. You could start a painting with mountains, and then you could change it to the surface of the moon, whatever you want to do. So don't worry. There's nothing you can do that we can't fix. I think that's why I started painting when my kids were teenagers.
The one thing you had control over.
Yeah, exactly. I just put in some more yellow because basically, oh, here's another thing I want to tell you. It's always a good idea to step back about 5 feet from your painting and look at it from a proper viewing distance. If you go into a museum and you're looking at Monets and Van Goghs, they won't let you look at it from your nose in the painting like we're painting it. If you put your face 10 inches from a famous work of art, you will make the guard very nervous. But the other reason that we step back is because you can see it better. The paintings aren't meant to, unless it's a realistic painting, where you're looking at exactly how perfect someone made a grape. If it's an impressionistic painting like this one, you're supposed to see it from 5 or 10 feet away. That's the proper viewing distance. So let's give our own paintings the same respect we would give someone else's painting, and let's step back about 5 to 10 feet away and see it from the same distance someone would see it in our house. Okay? Sound good?
Yeah.
I just added a bunch of yellow, and now I'm like, oh, it's too yellow. I'm going to need more pink. But I can't really tell that from up close sometimes. So I'm going to need to step back. And I actually just cheated. I looked in the camera lens, and so I can see things in the camera lens that I can't see up close. But I'm going to step back and look at mine too. And then I can tell. Are all my colors represented? Do I need to, add some more blue some blue and white after it dries and kind of start again? But I can't make those decisions until I step back. I had to let mine dry a bit because if I just keep painting over it and then back and forth with blue, I'm going to end up with brown. Because the way you make brown is all the primary colors together, red plus yellow plus blue make brown.
Which
So,
one are mixing?
Yeah. So I have to force myself to step away and let it dry sometimes.
I think you need just more paint and less pressure.
We could not do this kind of color on top of color if we were using oil paints because they would all mix and then we would definitely have brown. This kind of color on top of color on top of color back and forth, that is definitely acrylic. It would also be a disaster if we did it with watercolors.
Oh, yeah. That's always a disaster, I feel like.
Well, each medium or each type of painting has its own strengths and weaknesses, but this back and forth between colors, yeah, this is acrylic only because it dries. You know, if you're not there yet, it's okay, but I'm going to go ahead and just show you what I'm going to do for the purple, okay? But you don't have to do it yet. I know you know, I just want to give you time to do whatever color at the end, but this would be the last colors. I would mix a little red and a little blue together to make a purple, and then it's going to end up being really dark. So I need to add white so I can see the color. Otherwise I'll have like an eggplant purple. It'll be too dark. So I'm mixing a little red, a little blue. That's giving me a very dark purple. And I want to add some white to it so that I can actually see it. And then I should have a purple I can actually see if I add some white to it. And then that color, it's going to overlap with the red kind of on the outsides of this bunch of paint. Make sure your brush is clean so it's not mixing. If you mix purple and yellow together, you tend to get brown. So you want to avoid putting purple over wet yellow. Don't do that. And I can put it on with a bigger brush and kind of these bigger, just the purple. And just kind of put in some purpley blue on these outside parts. Just kind of brings more color out to the sky around the whole sunset. Just don't put it over yellow. The only color that I don't see in sunsets usually, and it does happen sometimes, but the only color I don't see in a sunset is green.
Yeah.
But you will have green in the water, right? Because yellow plus blue equals green. Anyway, if I confused you, just ignore me. Whatever streaks you put in there, it's going to be pretty. And if it turns brown, we let it dry and we just start again. We just paint white over it, start again. If your water area is as bright as or brighter than the top, you'll need to add more blue stripes to tone it down. The
Okay,
water area should be less bright than the sky because these are reflections of light. They shouldn't be brighter than the light it reflects. That makes sense, right?
yep, for sure. I didn't think about that earlier, but now
I did.
now it makes
Yeah,
sense.
that's what's driving me nuts.
And it's an easy fix. You just let it dry and then you pull across some blue lines and it'll just tow it down. But let it dry first before you do that.
The water.
Obviously, the painting is really about that background and the water. And then the mountains, they're just easy in comparison. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and show you the mountains, okay? And just remember, after you get your mountains on and you let them dry, then you can tweak your water all you want or your sky, okay?
Okay,
Before the balloons. But what I'm gonna do is at the bottom of that dividing line, I'm gonna go at the very bottom of it and I'm gonna make straight a line as I can. And know that it doesn't have to be perfect, that nobody can make a perfect straight line unless they have a ruler. So if you have a ruler and you want to use a ruler, you could do that, or you could just try your best.
is
I'm
that
just going to
black?
cover that horizon line with black.
Okay.
Cover the whole thing with black. And it's just the bottom that has to be straight because we're going to put mountains above it. And then when you draw on your mountains, the important thing that you remember is that each one should look a little bit different than the other, and each one should be a different height. So let's say I put a dot here for the top of that mountain, and then I want this one a little bit different height, and then I want, a tall one somewhere near the middle, maybe right there. But I'm just showing you like the different heights because I don't want them all to be the same height, okay? And as long as the dots are in different places, then I'm good. And then I'm going to start with black paint on a small round brush. And I'm going to start lower on the horizon. And then I'm going to wiggle up and then wiggle down, wiggle up. It's almost like one of those, like if you're watching one of those medical shows and they show the heart waves.
Oh, yeah.
Wiggle down. Yeah. Wiggle up. And wiggle, 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 wiggle. And the reason you're wiggling is because mountains are never perfectly straight. Nothing in nature is perfectly straight. And so if we wiggle our brush and make hills and valleys in it, it's going to look more natural. Okay.
Do you use like a skinny brush for that?
I use the skinny brush to
Do the wiggle. Okay.
and then use a slightly bigger brush to fill in the space in between.
That's what I think.
So a couple things about that. One, remember, it's just painting. If you screw it up, no one's going to die. It's not brain surgery.
That's true.
And then two, we're usually the hardest on ourselves while we're painting it. And then the next day we go, all right, that's not so bad. Do you see how I broke up some of it with just some blue and white stripes?
Yep.
So mine was looking like one of those balls you buy at the store, those rubber balls. So I broke it up.
Your mountains are like spooky. They're like what's it called? Nightmare Before Christmas shape. I like it.
That's what I love about acrylic though. I could just go back and forth with the colors as long as I let them dry in between, you know. And it is a little time consuming this way, but at least you can do it. Where with oils and watercolors, no way.
Right.
You have a huge mess by now. So I'm going to go ahead and show you the balloons, okay?
Yeah.
I did put in more pink here and here, here and here, but you can do later.
I copied you with that because that looks really good.
Thanks. Well, I got to thinking about like this is very pink and this is very pink, and but I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do the balloons, okay?
Okay.
So what we're going to do is, remember those little shadows I made as an afterthought?
Yes.
Let's use those as a training tool. Since you said you like them, we're going to put them on.
Okay.
So notice how it's stair step, right? These balloons are stair step, and then the shadows are stair step too. So let's go ahead, and what we're going to do is, just so that we can practice, we're going to mix a little white with a little black to make a light gray.
Sorry, are you using like a really little brush or?
Yes.
Okay.
It's I only am using 3 sizes, so it's my small round. It's the only round I'm using. So,
okay.
I mean, your brushes are different than mine, but it's basically just a small round brush. So basically the shape of the shadow is just going to be, and I'm going to put it over here because this top big balloon is over in this corner, okay? So I've got to make the shadow down here in the same general line. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just going to draw an egg. And then fill it in lightly with that gray, real light, very, very, very little paint.
Okay.
And then I'm going to take the stick part, and then I'm just going to mess it up by pulling back and forth. And that just kind of breaks it up so it looks like it's, you know, in the water, not perfect. And then the little basket, same thing. It's just a couple little lines of of my brush, just make a little rectangle. I just noticed mine is pretty light. I might need a little darker gray, but
Okay.
just so it's a shadow, not a highlight. But this is just good practice for us to get that shape down. This top one is kind of like an egg, and then it comes down to a neck, like a light bulb, actually. But in the water, if I make an egg, it'll work.
Okay.
And then then there's a medium one, and it's halfway up between here and the horizon. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to make like an egg. And then I'm going to add a little neck to it so it's more like a light bulb. And then I'm going to scribble across it with the stick of my brush a little to make it not too solid. And then a couple more lines just below to be the basket. And then the small one, same thing. Now reflections don't have to be very perfect. I mean shadows, so. I hate to say it, they look like little hand grenades in the water.
They do.
And if they don't, you know, they're not going to line up perfect or be exactly the same shape or whatever. No one's going to measure it. In fact, they probably won't even notice them. It just, you know, to your subconscious, it just kind of there was something about it when I looked at the original, I'm like, there's something missing. And then I went, the balloons don't have a shadow. And if they're over the water, they need a shadow. When you do the balloons, it's the same shape, but it's upside down. And here's an easy way to do it. You could take your tiniest little brush and dip it in white. And the reason I would do it in white just for the outline is that if you screw it up, then you don't have a big black blob in your sky. You have just white. Because you can always paint over the white with black, right?
Right.
So I'm going to go up from my shadow and try to put it in the same line, but it's going to be way up here, almost in the corner of the painting. And I'm going to make an upside down egg, but know that the first time I do it, it's not going to be perfect. I'm going to have to build out. You can always make it bigger. You just can't make it smaller. And I'm going to set my pinky on the canvas, and that steadies my hand. And then I could make it bigger. Until I get the shape that I want. And it's basically a light bulb shape. It's an upside down egg, and then it has a neck to it. So if you think about a light bulb. Now there are lots of different shapes of hot air balloons, as you know, since you guys are experts having them in your backyard. But these are the, you know, this is an easy shape to do. Easier. And then we picked a really easy way to do the baskets. basically we just put a rectangle down below, just a little rectangle.
Mm-hmm.
And then we just make a quick little rope. And you could do 2, 1 on each side, or 3, 1 in the middle too. And I can just let that dry and paint over it in black exactly the way it is.
Okay.
Do you need me to explain that again?
Sure.
Okay, so for this middle one, I'm going to go up in basically the same line, but I have to remember this is stair step, right? I want the angle. The big one is highest, the middle one is going to be medium high, the baby is going to be lower.
So the mountains, okay.
And I just want to kind of make it above where I put the medium shadow. And I'm going to make, remember you can always make it larger, but you can't make it smaller very easily using the white paint, because I can more easily fix that than I can black. And make it like a light bulb shape. It's like an upside down egg, but then it has a neck. It's almost like a human head shape, which is really creepy when I think about it.
It does look like that.
And then I just pull down a little quick line on each side, maybe 1 in the middle, and then I put a little rectangle underneath for the basket. And you know, you don't have to put any detail in the basket, but just make sure that this is a stair step, just like this is a stair step. The shadows are the same kind of stair step. And then same thing for the bottom balloon, upside down egg, little neck to it, like a light bulb or a human head. And I know some balloons are rounder and stuff, but we're just doing basic, so we don't have to be perfectionists about it. If you can make a better balloon in another shape, please, by all means.
Oh, definitely not.
And then they're easy because we just let that dry a minute and then paint over them in black. I mean, you could have done it in black. It's just that black is a little less forgiving. And when you put on when you paint over them in black, if you pick up any wet white, you can just put on 2 coats, that'll cover it.
Okay.
And then you might even want to consider just turning it upside down so you can reach it better.
Oh, that might be easier.
And just go slow and careful, that's all. And remember, if you mess up, you can always make it bigger. Thank you so much for painting with me tonight.
Oh, thank you for all your help.
If you want to put a couple of birds in your painting, you can. I mean, I think it's really pretty as simple as it is.
Yeah.
But if you want to put in birds or anything else, feel free.
I don't think you
I
want to.
don't think it really needs it.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
Sometimes paintings, just cry for a little life. But I think this one is, I don't know, it's not crying out.
Black seagulls, that's about it.
My shadow.
Problem with these kind of sunsets is I never want to be finished.
Oh, you went over your black so fast. Good job.
When you're finished, you can take the tiniest brush that you have and then just sign your name in the bottom right-hand corner. That's where I put it, but you can really put yours wherever you want.
Cool.
I just put my initials.
Are you gonna
on
do
there.
it in red like Ross?
Mine's full.
Yeah, you could put it in red like Bob Ross. There you go.